I'm going to call this meeting the Oskaloosa City Council to order. Today is Monday, January 6th, 2020. We start with our invocation by Pastor Bruce Witter, Central United Methodist Church.
Shall we pray together? Almighty God, we ask that you make us aware of your loving and guiding presence. For Oskaloosa City Council, Mayor, and each person gathered here in these council chambers this evening. Grant wisdom and insight to our leaders as they embark upon the challenges and opportunities of the new year and continue to build on the progress of the past. The Apostle Paul wrote, urging all of us to pray on behalf of all people, but especially for those who are in positions of leadership, so that we may lead peaceful lives in godliness and dignity. He went on to say that this is good and acceptable in the sight of God, our Savior, who desires for all people to be saved and to come to the knowledge of truth. As the men and women of our council serve our city, help us as the citizens of our community to support them in the responsibilities entrusted to them. Empower them with your Spirit. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, Pastor.
Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Here.
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 Moore.
Here.
Munson.
Here.
Wally.
Here.
Yates.
Here.
Okay. Let's see. Next is the opportunity for community comments. This item is reserved to receive comments from the community for concerns whether or not they're included in the current agenda. The community is encouraged to come and speak before the mayor and city council, asked to keep statements brief, time limited to no more than 3 minutes. Any questions should be asked of the city staff, city council members, or the mayor prior to speaking to the full council, so that way concerns can be properly researched and answered away from the meeting. Comments are to be directed to the mayor and city council only. Is there anyone who would like to speak tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on. Next up is the consent agenda. These are all items that are considered routine in nature. I did want to draw the council's attention to 3 items. Item J is a resolution setting a public hearing for the sale of city-owned property. It's located at 610 D Avenue West. That will be on January 21st. Item K is a resolution scheduling the date for a public hearing and authorizing to receive and open bids for the 6th Street curb and gutter replacement project. That's on February 18th. And item L, where it's a resolution setting the public hearing on plans and specifications, authorizing the advertisement of bids for Division 1 of Phase 3 of the Sanitary Sewer System Improvements Project. That hearing is also on February 18th. Do we have a motion of support for the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Are items K and L rebids from earlier, or I guess late last fall? The 6th Street. I was thinking that those had gone to bid and they came back high, and so we decided to defer. Is that right?
That is correct. Okay.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, so you're talking about the 6th Street curb, yes, is that the answer to that one, and then the Phase 1, or excuse me, Phase 3, Division 1, that was the one where we had a significantly higher bid than our estimates, and so the work has been broken out into different types of phases with the hope that we'll get additional bidders.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Ross.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Munson.
Yes.
Wally.
Yes.
Yates.
Yes.
Burnett.
Yes.
Calgery.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Gets us into the regular agenda. Item A is just the announcement of vacancies that we have on various boards and commissions. First is the Airport Commission, a vacancy for a term ending on December 31st of 2021. The Board of Adjustment, there's a vacancy for a term ending December 31st of 2020. The Building Code Board of Appeals, we have one vacancy for an ex officio member. Civil Service Commission, we have one vacancy for a term beginning April 1st of 2020. Historic Preservation Commission, we have two vacancies for alternate members, one for a term ending on December 31st of 2020 and one for a term ending December 31st of 2022. The Housing Trust Fund Committee, there's one vacancy for a 3-year term that begins February 2020 and one at-large vacancy for a term ending on January 31st of 2020. The Municipal Housing, 3 vacancies for 2-year terms that begin on March 2020 and one vacancy for an unexpired term that's ending February 28th of 2021. On the Planning and Zoning Commission, we have one vacancy. It's for an unexpired term ending on April of 2020. And finally, the Stephen Memorial Animal Shelter, there's one vacancy for a 2-year term that begins on January 1st of 2020. Going to item B, this is a presentation of the 2019 Creative Placemaking Activity Report. We've got Developmental Services Director Sean Christ and City Manager Michael Schrock to give us that presentation. Sean, it's yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so it's been about, I think, 9 months since Council accepted our placemaking action plan. And we wanted to bring to you a report of some of the activities of what's been going on behind the scenes to some extent, if you will, for the last 9 months. So what we're going to do is we're going to have on the screen the activity report. I think all of you have a copy of that here in front of you. It's about 2.5 pages. And there's some background information on that report, so I'll be going through that incrementally. And then we're also going to have in front of you the website, the Placemaking Action Plan website. And that is located at OskaloosaPlacemaking.com. And I'm sure all of you have seen this previously. But I think what we'll do is I'll go through this and then we'll draw attention to the different themes in that plan and then also the subcommittees that are working on the specific goals within each of those themes. So if you go to the main page on our placemaking plan, you'll see a listing at the top with links of the 6 key themes that make up this plan. And then if you scroll down on that page, you'll see again each of those themes. Starting here is our visioning session. That's where the project started. There were 3 separate visioning or brainstorming sessions, and that's where we gathered all of the ideas from the community members on where to go with this plan. And if you continue scrolling down, you'll see the first theme, a link to each of those 6 themes that I mentioned earlier that make up that plan. And then below that, our first theme, which is dining and socializing. And this particular theme focused primarily on downtown revitalization. What they're looking for here is to find ways to capitalize on what we already have. We have a fantastic downtown. We have a fantastic man shell. It's known throughout the area and the region. But how can we make this better? What can we do to get people there, to give them places to socialize? And the first goal, as part of that theme, is to bring in another restaurant. And I think the primary goal of this plan is to have that restaurant be specific to the square itself. And you can see here in that image a neat concept for I think it's the former Swims building, if I recall, and a specific concept for that building. In this case, it's called Boone Steakhouse, which would be a family-friendly bar and restaurant. And there's a link there. We don't need to go to that now, but that will take you to more specific information on that concept, including a business plan and a floor plan layout for that building. So unfortunately, we haven't made much progress on this. There has been some interest in the old Swims building, but that sort of fizzled out, at least at this point. But the restaurant subcommittee, they've reported on a few other items or activities. One is that the Pizza Den opened on A Avenue East, 214 A Avenue East. And there's also still interest in the former Mi Ranchito building. That's at 112 First Avenue East. That owner is currently working through plans to convert that building, to remodel that space and open a bar and restaurant there. And he has engaged an architect on that work. So that's proceeding on that particular committee. Second goal under this theme is the Art Center, the Downtown Art Center. What this plan is saying is that the building is essentially underutilized. They estimate about 20% of that space is utilized, 80% is still available, so they're offering recommendations on how to build that out. And this particular item includes, again, floor plans and recommendations on how to use that space, how to increase the programming within that building. And we do have a subcommittee for this group, and they reported that the side and rear brick walls in the building were repaired and tuck pointed by the owner. That was done within the last couple of months. They've added a new sign for the art center and also a mural on the back walls of the building that's near their rear entrance, just off the alley. And then I would also point out that the members on this art center subcommittee and our FACE subcommittee, which is an art theme, I'll talk about that momentarily, those members are essentially the same, primarily the same, so they're combining their efforts as they've merged those two subcommittees. Moving down is our next theme, improved connectivity, pedestrian spaces, and trails. That's shown as connectivity there on your handout. The transfer of jurisdiction subcommittee. So what this talks about is to work with the Iowa Department of Transportation to look at opportunities to take ownership of the state and U.S. highways within our corporate limits. And there are procedures for doing that. We've been working with a consultant on ways to do that. So this subcommittee is essentially continuing those efforts that we've had up to this point. And that subcommittee was reporting that they've engaged the Eastern Iowa Transportation Coalition. They've met and they've discussed our regional needs. As I think all of you will recall, and we're happy to hear, the Northwest Bypass Connector is in the DOT's 5-year plan. We also have the Southeast Connector. That's also under discussion, not in the plans, but under discussion. The DOT's offered assistance and also opportunities to fund that project. And then lastly, that McClure, as I mentioned, as a consultant, they've been engaged, and they're working with the DOT on safety improvements to those corridors prior to that jurisdiction transfer. And they've also put together some nice concepts for pedestrian crossings to improve safety on those routes as well. Shared streets is another goal under that theme for connectivity. And this is something, as you know, we've embraced the complete streets concepts here in Oskaloosa. This continues those efforts. The Shared Streets Subcommittee has reported that the 4-lane to 3-lane conversions with bike lanes, as you know, is under consideration and discussion by those of you here in this room. So we appreciate your efforts on that you're continuing to talk about those efforts. Bike lanes and trails. What this plan has pointed out that we have a very nice recreation trail that surrounds our community, but the plan calls out that it's not easy for our residents to get there. So how do we get people there to that recreation trail? And this plan recommends a number of different ways. How do we get people from the trail to other community facilities, parks, downtown, university? And what they essentially proposed, again, is the 4-lane, the on-street bicycle lane concept, essentially a 4-lane spoke, if you will, heading out from our downtown square. And this committee has pointed out that the bike lanes is something that's already under discussion as we're talking the 3-lane or 4-lane to 3-lane conversion that's underway. They also don't want to lose sight of our off-street recreation trails. They think those are important. They think there's some segments that are still missing and can be built today. They also wanted to see those trails continue to improve. So what this group is focusing on, and they've been coordinating with the city and the water department on this, is to pursue grant funding, probably McQuiston Trust funding, to place a water fountain bench, bike maintenance station, and also restrooms on the northeast side of town near the recreation trail in the northeast wastewater treatment plant. So it'd be another stop very similar to what we see in Edmondson Park, another location there on the trail for our residents and users. The last goal under this theme is a bike share subcommittee. And again, this is to pursue that goal to make Oskaloosa bicycle friendly, and again find ways to get people where they need to go, particularly downtown. And they propose a concept to add a bike share program, probably at the university, to give people an opportunity to borrow bikes to get downtown or to other locations. So this committee's reported that they've talked to various bike share companies. A couple of them noted here as VO Ride and Colony Share, regarding providing service to Oskaloosa. And what they've found is that these services now primarily focus on larger communities. There are exceptions to that, but it will cost us. So they're trying to find an opportunity that doesn't require a large initial investment and also doesn't require on-site staff to manage that program. And they think that management could be somewhat burdensome. So they're continuing to look for an affordable solution and something that would not require that burden of local management and staff to coordinate that effort. Our third theme is arts, and the first goal for this is fine arts and cultural events. That's our FACE group. There's a subcommittee working on that, and what the plan is recommending is we have a number of fantastic arts organizations in town, but how can we get them together? So we've talked about using the FACE group as a potential umbrella organization for the Art Center, perhaps the sculpture tour, and then also potentially the George Daly Auditorium, for example. And so what if all of those groups are under this umbrella organization? They can combine their resources, they can pursue similar grant opportunities, and communication can provide for a better result and perhaps improve the opportunities that are available to the community. So that subcommittee is the same. That's working on the Art Center. I mentioned that. They've had discussions out there with all those involved. I don't think we've made a whole lot of progress on this, but we can say that they're talking. And the subcommittees reported that they've worked on a communications plan among all the organizations. They're trying to unify their communications efforts and also make them accessible between organizations, and they're also looking at their marketing strategies. They've held a couple roundtable discussions, and they're also working to promote their events in a shared fashion. They mentioned here they created a shared poster for some of their events. The next theme is William Penn University, and to increase that connection. There's two subcommittees with this theme. First is the Transportation Subcommittee. So what they're saying is the university's been in town, I think, since 1873, 1876, as I recall, and there continues to be a disconnect from the university to the city itself. So how do we improve that? In the first way, what they're saying is transportation, and they're recommending ways to help get students downtown, essentially, so they can hang out here, they can spend money here, they can meet members of the community here. So how do we do that? So this subcommittee reported that they did hold a meeting with the Dean of Students. They gathered information, discussed transportation options that are or are not personally available to students. They looked at a potential car sharing program because not all students have their own personal vehicle on campus. Avis Zipcar was one option that they looked at. And then they're also talking about a student survey to better identify their wants and needs on transportation in town. The other component is mentorship. So how do we, once we resolve the transportation issue, how do we try to mend that separation so we can try to increase our mentoring opportunities? And what this plan is recommending, and the committee's been looking into this, one I looked at is to better promote internship and job sharing opportunities and how that would benefit students. It sounds like not all students are aware that there are internships out there and how that can benefit them as they move forward in the workforce. They also reviewed the existing mentorship programs that pair students with host families. I think that's called the Penn Parent Students. And they found that that's a very successful program, and they're not recommending any changes to that at this time. There are also programs, as I understand, that connect students to alumni as well. And then lastly, they organized a women's leadership conference or program in October. Moving down to the housing theme. This is the fifth of 6 themes, and as you know, housing is still a problem for Oskaloosa, like it is most of rural Iowa. We do have a subcommittee working on this. This is one of our more active subcommittees. It's the same members that are working with the chamber group, and it's a county-wide subcommittee as well. So this particular group is looking at ways to get housing throughout Mahaska County. So what this plan was recommending is that the biggest challenge that they pointed out here to get housing is there's a gap. There's a gap between what it costs to build a house and what someone is willing to pay for that house. And we're still working on ways to address that. But, it goes beyond that. So the committee's been working on a number of different things. You might recall the Maxfield study from 2017. Senior housing was a very large component of that and one of the priorities from that plan. The subcommittee's been exploring development opportunities recommended by that plan. They've talked to all of our local senior housing providers to see if there's any interest or a need to expand the current facilities that we already have. And that could be to offer a number of different solutions, whether it's assisted living or independent living or other opportunities for seniors. There was also some discussion with the senior housing developer as well. We made sure that study was available to them and the data that was associated with that. I mentioned this was county-wide, so they gathered data, county-wide data on housing units that are available and also buildings and site inventory. You may have heard of the Governor's Homes for Iowa program. That's something that the committee researched. We also toured the construction facility located up in Newton at the correctional facility. We've had meetings with the developer, actually a few meetings with the developer interested in upper story housing downtown. And to my knowledge, they're still proceeding with that opportunity at this time. Also been a lot of talk about the Elks Lodge building. You know, the Elks, their membership is continuing to dwindle over the years. They may be interested in potentially relocating or downsizing their facility, and there could be an opportunity to purchase and perhaps repurpose or redevelop that site. We think that could be a great housing opportunity for senior housing or perhaps apartments. So we've been talking to developers and consultants about that. We've had a couple tours. There has been some interest in the building. So we see that as a nice opportunity for Oskaloosa. And along those lines, we created a template request for proposals or RFP document that could be used for the Elks building, perhaps other vacant buildings as well that could be repurposed. The former YMCA would be another example, former Webster School, another one, and that would be available to anybody, any of those owners that would be looking to market their buildings to potential interest from developers. And then lastly, we're still working on that revolving loan fund. We're finding that there are no other examples, at least in Iowa, out there on this fund. But it hasn't been forgotten. We're still moving forward on that. We have that in the proposed CIP. And we're talking to our potential partners that have been identified, private, county, and then the state as well, on funding partnerships for that. So that's still on our radar, and we're working on a program as we speak. And then moving down, the last theme is beautification. And there are two subcomponents to this. One is a gateway beautification goal. And this primarily looks at our entrances into Oskaloosa. How do we improve the way they look? And how do we improve wayfinding? We've got a number of great amenities in town, but how can we improve the way the community looks as they travel around the community between those amenities? So you can see here on the screen just one example of a number of concepts in there that proposes some improvements to our intersections and our gateways and also our signage. The committee that's been working on this effort has reported that there was a new Oskaloosa promotional billboard that was installed out on the bypass, Highway 163. And there was also volunteers organized to clean up the gateway sign on A Avenue West on Highway 92. And I understand Public Works staff assisted with that as well by repairing some of the lights at that sign. And then last is the Downtown Beautification Subcommittee. I would say this is arguably our most active committee. It's the same people that have been involved in the alley project for a number of years. And they're doing a good job. You can see here just a summary of so many things that they've been working on. For them, alley beautification remains a priority. They're still working on additional improvements and visions that they have for the alley. They've worked on moving all dumpsters to the north-south section of that alley, so it's not in view from the square. They did get Golden Goose funding to add what they call bookends, decorative bookend panels, which were installed next to those dumpsters that I mentioned in the north-south sections of the alley to help block the view of those dumpsters from the street. And they have plans to expand that to areas beyond the alley, elsewhere downtown, to place 6 additional panels if funding, or 6 additional bookend panels if funding allows. They also added street planters at the entrance to the alley. They've been there for a few months. They're wooden planters. They also repainted the West End walkway, and again, this has all been done at no cost to the city. They also put together some sketches for what we're calling the curb bump out. So if you can imagine that mid-block crossing from the alley to the square park next to Smoky Road. So they would like to bump the curbs out into the street, narrow that crossing, add a pedestrian element, add perhaps some landscaping, some street furniture, and they've got a number of ideas for those 4 curb bookends of that crosswalk area. And they've been working with us to put together some designs and then hopefully pursue some funding to construct those. And that, again, is a state route, at least at this time, so that would take some coordination with the DOT. They've been working on a number of cost estimates. One is for a roofed enclosure and also a climate control system over the alley. They'd like to get that area outside, that's now outside, inside, so it's out of the elements and can be used year-round. They've also got cost estimates for accent lighting on the tree trunks in the square area. They think they could use some uplighting on those trees to help improve the atmosphere there at night. Also looking at costs and options for interactive kiosks, informational kiosks around the center, around the square area, potentially in the square, the center square itself. And then also there were murals painted and installed on the west end of the alley. There's a second phase in the works as well. And then lastly, they're talking to the county supervisors to put together a covered event space or stage in their parking lot on the south side of the county courthouse building, and also potentially restrooms as well. And I think there were concepts prepared on that a couple of years ago. So a few takeaways on that while I wrap up here. I think you can safely say that placemaking is still an active part of the community. The process, it was part of what we call the planning process. It was an opportunity for us to identify priorities that the community wanted, not just us here in this room. And then we were able to narrow those down by going through that process, by specifying what we wanted to pursue, and then options and goals to pursue those priorities. The subcommittees, as you can see here, they're still active, and there's a lot of people involved. And that's good because it brings many more people to the table to help us out with this than what we would otherwise have just with city staff. They continue to meet monthly at City Hall. They give reports, they discuss issues, they ask for direction or feedback from others on the group. It's a system that I think is working pretty well. And if anyone else is interested in joining, it's not too late. So we still have opportunities on any of these subcommittees. If someone's interested, feel free to send them our way. McClure is still involved. They've been available for assistance and questions. They've given us some feedback and guidance throughout the process. I should point out they're now a subsidiary of McClure. They're now known as Alchemy Community Transformations. Their website's in your packet there if you ever want to check them out. And then lastly, I should mention, well, I did mention this is part of a planning effort, and it's a broader effort. So this is one of the first steps that we're moving toward updating Oskaloosa's comprehensive plan, which is now 20 years old. So that's all I had. Sorry it was so long, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
You go through it again.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're doing a lot of stuff. Yeah,
Thanks, Sean. Good job.
Thanks, Sean.
well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to item C. This is to consider an ordinance amending the Oskaloosa Municipal Code, Chapter 17.36, having to do with floodplain management regulations. The National Flood Insurance Program is a federal program designed to reduce future flood damage through community-based floodplain management. Communities who adopt and enforce a floodplain management ordinance receive access to affordable National Flood Insurance Program flood protection for property owners. Oskaloosa became an NFIP community in 2011 and currently has 2 properties within the city that use the flood insurance policies. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources has regulatory authority over most of Iowa's floodplains and works with communities to adopt the floodplain management ordinances. They have released an updated statewide model ordinance and have recommended to Oskaloosa update its ordinance by adopting their new model. The ordinance meets all the state standards and meets or exceeds the minimum federal standards. Communities are allowed to adopt higher standards if they wish. So Oskaloosa's floodplain management ordinance is a chapter within the zoning ordinance. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing at their December 3rd, 2019 meeting and recommended unanimous approval of the attached ordinance. Staff has concurred and recommends that the council open a public hearing, accept comments and questions, discuss the proposed ordinance, and then hold the first reading. This is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion supporting this first reading of the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
Question. What are the 2 properties?
that have flood insurance?
Yeah.
Boy, do we have that?
No.
How do we even know that there are two? Was there?
Sean does.
I did request a list.
Okay.
That was curious as well. I believe they're up in your neighborhood, Mayor.
Oh, okay, so maybe
bottom
along
of
West
the hill.
Glendale.
So the creek behind those homes, which the homes are outside of the
Yeah.
floodplain, but they do have policies.
Okay.
Bruce
Smith.
had that problem when we instigated this, I knew that.
Okay.
And then there was a problem out at Fox Run, is that the other one? Where they built that last new house south of the road?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
So both of them were up in the West Glendale area, from the sound of it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Near Mayor. Near.
There we go. Yes. Mike and I had a conversation earlier today that we believe this is a federally sourced map, but if you look at the streets and work your way down, McMullen Drive is misspelled by someone with a sense of humor. Perhaps he worked for McDonald's at one time.
They were hungry.
But yes, McMuffin Drive is not the name of that.
So it looks like a lot more than two properties, but I was having trouble reading the map, the color helps.
Yep.
I mean, I guess we haven't said how big the properties are, but I know the Smith property's not that big.
Yeah, we're
But-
talking residential.
And I don't know if the other neighbors along there had it. Bruce is the one that nailed me on it a year and a half ago, because his insurance went sky high when we allowed to be in a floodplain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a very big creek.
Yep.
yeah, that area too gets flooded.
So I'm just, like I said, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, if we're causing undue hardship like that, I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but I wanna know about it up front.
Yep. Yep.
So do I have to vote no to get that figured out, or? We'll see.
Well, Mayor, Council, having an adopted floodplain ordinance doesn't create hardship. In fact, it's actually preventing future issues by enacting rules and regulations that would stop properties from being constructed in the floodplain, and also, again, allows these property owners to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. So that does in fact save them money, so they can actually have a policy for the property. Otherwise, they may not be able to have an insurance policy on their home.
Which is the government flood insurance, correct?
Right.
Correct.
Well, I could do my own research, I was hoping you guys knew, but, and maybe it worked out that in Bruce's case, he got a break on the insurance because he got in the federal program, but at the time, he was livid because his insurance company called him up and says, guess what, your insurance is going up 10 times. I made that up, the 10 times, but, because of the fact all of a sudden it was designated as a floodplain now. And like I said, it's not a very big creek.
Yeah, the government's been working on the program to try to make it solvent, so it's sustainable, so policies have increased nationwide.
You know that, you just said an oxymoron, don't you? Government, they don't do that.
Yeah.
They complicate, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, but I will tell you that the ordinance that we're adopting is the minimum that's recommended. I mentioned we can adopt higher standards, but I'm not proposing that for Oskaloosa.
Well, I see that. I just don't know what the minimum standards are gonna do to the public.
Other comments? Roll call, please.
Moore?
Yes.
Coniston? Yes. Wally?
So what am I voting? Am I gonna vote no, and to get you to find out some of this stuff, or are we gonna look into it and let us know?
No, we have 2 more readings to go.
I know, but I'd like to have it for the next reading.
Yep, I
Okay.
think that's so noted.
So I'll vote yes so far.
Yates?
Yes.
Burnett?
Yes.
Calgery?
Yeah.
Dross?
Yes.
Okay, that passes on the first reading. Item B is consider an ordinance amending Oskaloosa Municipal Code, Chapter 13.08, Section 13.08.570A. It's the first reading. The sanitary sewer fund, or the wastewater department, is an essential service provided by the city. The service is an enterprise utility fund, and as such, the revenues generated through rates must be spent on the operation of the utility. During the city council sessions held on November 18th of 2019 and December 16th of 2019, The consensus from council was to proceed with a funding scenario to increase utility system revenue by 8%. In addition, the city council indicated support to modify the revenue stream generated by the sewer utility. The system receives revenues from customers in two ways: a monthly minimum charge or base rate, and for consumption, the utilization rate. The current split of revenue received by the utility is 27% base rate and 73% utilization. This split in revenue generated is expected to move to 28% base rate and 72% utilization within this item's proposed action. Ultimately, the decision provided to staff is to achieve a revenue stream of 30% base rate and 70% utilization rate over the next couple of years. This type of modification provides a more stable source of revenue month over month for the utility to take on the upcoming debt associated with planned treatment facility upgrades. As noted in previous public meetings, the city's infrastructure, specifically the sanitary sewer system, is facing critical failures, and the need for expensive improvements are needed due to age, deferred, or minimal amounts of maintenance, and the treatment mandates that were received from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources and the Environmental Protection Agency. As a result, over the past 5 fiscal years, the sewer system, at the direction of the City Council, has embarked upon multiple system designs, studies, improvement projects, and operational changes. All of the required system work and some of the operational changes have come at sharp cost to the ratepayers in the form of significant rate increases year over year, due to the compressed schedule that we have to complete the work. So anyway, do we have a motion supporting these rate increases?
So moved.
Okay, any discussion?
Who wrote this first page?
I did.
I'm gonna commend you, because I sat through both study sessions, and I read this, and it made perfect sense, but the study sessions, it was pretty confusing for me. And I think we made the right decision, but wasn't sure until I read the way this was written. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I do have a question. So we're really voting on two things here, correct? One is that we're gonna agree to an 8% increase, and that we're gonna change the utilization rate based on what's said here. Is that correct?
Yeah, that ratio.
Yes, it's all in one action, but yes, that's how it's presented.
All right. So I may agree with one and disagree with the other.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand what I'm reading. All right,
Yeah.
that's good.
And my only other comment is like everything else we've been doing with this, it's not a good deal, but it's gotta happen.
So do I explain my vote now, or do I explain it later? Because I'm gonna vote no, and the reason I'm gonna vote no is not because of the 8% increase, it's because of the utilization change. So I'll explain it now, I guess. So anyway, because I do think we need to go up 8%.
Okay.
All right,
So noted.
yep, thank you.
Okay, other comments? Roll call, please.
Coniston?
Yes.
Walling?
Yes.
Yates?
Yes.
Burnett?
No,
Calgery?
Yes.
Rock?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Moving on, item E is to consider a resolution approving an amendment to the contract with Fox Engineering Associates for the wastewater facility planned short-term improvement project. On November 17th of 2015, the DNR issued an amendment to the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits. The City Council, at their meeting on February 16 of 2016, approved a contract with Fox Engineering to perform an evaluation of the existing wastewater treatment plants and to provide a wastewater facility plan to outline improvements and estimated costs needed to meet the DNR permit criteria. The City Council, at their meeting on February 20th of 2018, also approved another contract with Fox Engineering to perform a pre-design evaluation for the wastewater treatment facility's short-term improvements. The wastewater facility plan provided by Fox outlined a 10-year plan involving the construction of a new facility at the Southwest Wastewater Treatment Facility site. As part of that plan, several short-term improvements of a serious nature or safety concern are required at the existing treatment plants to satisfy DNR requirements until the new facility can be completed. The contract with Fox Engineering, task order number 2070-20B, for an amount not to exceed $40,000, will include a design and inspection services for structural repairs to the primary and final clarifiers of both the northeast and southwest wastewater treatment facilities and the chlorine contact tank at the southwest wastewater treatment facility. These structural repairs are necessary to ensure the existing plants remain in operation until the new plant is operational in April of 2027. The proposed work for the structural repairs is currently planned in the city's capital improvement plan, listed as CIP 5 and CIP 6 in the capital improvement plan, number 8015-128, in fiscal year 2021. However, the failure of the concrete structures requires immediate attention, and the concrete repairs need to be prioritized and completed in fiscal year 2020. Although the electrical work, which is listed as CIP 3 and 4 in the CIP 8015-128, was previously planned in fiscal year 20, it needs to be delayed to fiscal 21 in order to complete the structural repairs. And so we have a motion supporting this resolution authorizing the agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Didn't think so.
10 years, huh?
Roll call, please.
Wally,
Yes.
Yates,
Yes.
Burnett,
Yes.
Calgery,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Getting to item F. So discuss or consider a resolution authorizing an agreement with HR Green for $297,000 to complete the work plan as required by the cooperative agreement for the Brownfields Community-Wide Hazardous Substance Assessment. The EPA awarded a $300,000 grant for the Brownfields Community-Wide Hazardous Substances Assessment with a project period from October 1 of 2019 to September 30 of 2022. As part of this EPA-approved project, the budget of $297,000 has been reserved for contractual services. In November of 2019, city staff advised a request for qualifications for the professional services required to complete the scope of work for the grant. After careful consideration, staff found HR Green to be the most qualified consulting firm to perform the tasks required by the project. City has previously worked with HR Green on a similar grant, which resulted in clearing 11 properties totaling approximately 121 acres for reuse. The investigations on these properties have leveraged $9.8 million in investment by way of new development, title transfers, and state shovel-ready certifications. So upon approval, HR Green will begin the program implementation and start work on community involvement initiatives. The primary form of community involvement will be to hold periodic voluntary meetings for the public in order to inform interested persons on the project goals, procedures, and current progress. HR Green will also perform the Phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment activities. And as a part of this project, HR Green will also assist with reuse planning activities, including conducting an infrastructure evaluation of the critical stormwater utilities and conducting a market study to identify future land use opportunities for a target area. So do we have a motion supporting this resolution authorizing the agreement with HR Green?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Who read this contract? And who, is it Keely? You read it? And-
He shipped it to me too.
Okay, well, that's good. I just a point, you know, I don't read them all, but I read contracts for a living, and we'd have this one so marked up, and we'd be sending it to our attorney to say, okay, we can't swallow all this, we need to compromise something. So you know, I mean.
And they did do some tinkering with it too. I got
Okay.
back to Keelish.
Good.
If you look, and as a matter of fact, I was just talking to Mike about it. Anymore, when you see contracts that come to the city, they're great. They all put in there, oh, by the way, our liability is limited to the amount you're paying us, which of course is completely unfair.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about it, they bumped, I think the number's 50,000 initially, they bumped it up to 300,000, which, as I just said to Mike, is better than a poke in the eye. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but so often we find anymore with a lot of these people that they are sadly many times in a stronger bargaining position than us when we desperately need them, and they say,
And you don't
this is
understand.
it, you need to sign on. But I was surprised they did not raise that figure.
And I'm glad you both have done that. I mean, we look at it and then they're written so lopsided.
Oh,
It's all for their
goodness, yes.
benefit. It should be a joint venture, but as we know in this world, there's not much of that. So if you don't push back once in a while, pretty soon, they just kind of run over you. But anyway,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Yates,
Yes.
Burnett,
Yes.
Calgery,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Coniston.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Item G, this is to consider a resolution awarding a construction contract to Iowa Bridge and Culvert. On December 17 of 2019, the bids were let at the Iowa DOT office for the Northeast Bridge Replacement Project. Scope of work on the project involves all work associated with the construction of a new bridge on North 17th Street leading to the Northeast Wastewater Treatment Facility. 3 bids received. The lowest bid was submitted by Iowa Bridge and Culvert LC for a total amount of $562,492.95, which is $112,764 lower than the engineer's estimate of $675,257. Great news. This project will be funded for 80% of the project cost, $449,994 from the Iowa DOT's federal funding, with the remaining 20% of the project cost, $112,499 from the city budget. The engineering consultant for the project, Calhoun Burns and Associates, reviewed the bids, recommended award of the contracts to Iowa Bridge and Culvert. If the project's awarded, the construction has a late start date of July 27 of 2020 with a total of 70 working days. The exact start date will be determined by the contractor after the construction contract is executed and after pre-construction meeting is held with the contractor. If the council awards the construction contract, staff recommends authorizing the city manager an additional amount of $56,000, about 10% of the contract, as a construction contingency for unforeseen circumstances. Staff is also requesting to authorize the Public Works Director to execute all the related contract documents. Do we have a motion of support for this resolution awarding the construction contract?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on it?
Well,
I knew that was coming.
actually, I was pleasantly surprised that the number came in as good as it did. Back here in the small print, it starts talking about Davis-Bacon. Is this a Davis-Bacon contract with that contractor?
Yes, it is. It's a federal
I mean, it's federal, I understand that, but, you know, it could have been better. Anyway, thank you.
Stayed under $1 million.
That's it.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
started out, I said I appreciate however that happened, but.
Yep. Took it over $1 million down to $909,500. So
Okay, round up.
what a bargain. Yeah. So,
Tom calls it a bridge to nowhere.
well. Any other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Burnett,
Yes.
Calgery,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Coniston,
Yes.
Wally,
Yes.
States,
Yes.
It passes. Okay, that gets us to the end of the regular agenda. Report on items from city staff. City manager, anything?
Mayor and Council, just want to make a note that we have a budget study session coming up on January 20th. Starts at 1 o'clock, lasts until we're done. Historically, that's how it's worked. I think we usually wrap up about 8 or 9 o'clock.
Yep.
I think in the 10 years we've done this together, I think we've had one person show up from the public. So obviously it's open to the public, they can come, although that is MLK Day, the city doors will be open for that particular meeting. And then, of course, our regular meeting that would be scheduled for the 20th is now on the 21st at 6 o'clock. So that's all.
Okay. City clerk, anything? City attorney, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. City council members. Steve, how about you?
No, sir, fine, thank you.
Okay, Tom?
911 EMA met last week, these weeks messed up. This is last week. And you probably heard, we lost the lawsuit on the 28E, joining the 911 and EMA together. What we did was we voted unanimously, except the county didn't vote for it, to redo the 28E agreement and see if it'll fly. And the way I get it, it's like the judge looked at this and the county had made quite a few comments and points they wanted changed. Well, she started with the 28E, said, no, it's not right, and stopped, did not review it, and So it was over, and the judgment went to them in their favor. So that's by the advice of our attorneys. We have one attorney for 911 and we have one attorney for EMA. They said, we think you ought to make the changes she didn't like in it and go that way. And we asked Mark's on the board, Grunerdijk, okay, will you sue us again? And he was honest. He says, I don't know. The county, and he said, because the county engineer, county attorney, thank you, was out of town for the holiday, so he couldn't give any advice. And I don't know where their two attorneys, they had two attorneys hired for this. So that's where it stands. There's a lot of us on that committee feel terrible about all the money that's being spent, taxpayer money on attorney fees. But I supported doing it again.
How does this
For all of
affect
you.
911 service? Or does it?
Yes, it does. If it all got thrown out and stayed thrown out, it's the best way I can say it, it would go back to the way we had it. And 911 was supported by the municipalities. We were paying like Micah looked it up for me, about $157,000 the last year we had to pay it for the city. And the other municipalities and the county pay their portion. Am I saying that right, Michael? It's per capita is the way that's.
Yeah, it's a little more convoluted than that, but there's a formula to it. Yeah.
So that's a long answer to your question.
But the service itself that the people can expect right now, do they have 911 service? Can you expect that somebody to answer it the other that type of service? Yeah.
And believe me, we spent a lot of time talking about that.
Okay.
And the supervisors always say, yeah, no, we can't do that. But if something doesn't happen, there would be no money to pay people. So, but right now, they keep going along. That's been going on for 2 years, and they're in budget time right now, just like we are. So, we'll see.
Thanks, Tom.
That's all I got.
Okay, Doug, anything?
Nothing tonight, sir.
Scotty?
No,
Right.
no, thank you.
Okay, Joe?
No.
Wow, okay. The only thing I wanted to do was draw everybody's attention that Eggs and Issues, the first one of the year, is coming up on a Saturday. It will be featuring myself and Mark Groendijk in the hot seat, answering questions and receiving your comments, and if you feel the need, throw in a lot of accolades for something we might be doing right. Yeah, you never know. It could happen. So with that, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.